Okay, so your GMO greetings, yet I say we thank you everyone for joining in once again. For those who are unaware, I'm Odwirafo Kwesi Ranembata Akan. Odwirafo of AKONGUASUA Amaruka Tifimu, the Akwamu Nation in North America within Ojiraman, the purified nation, Afurakani, Afurakaini people, African Black people in the Western Hemisphere. So we wanted to come back on, get into another topic. We touched on some information in the previous few lives that actually coalesce with this. So tonight's topic, NKWAMUA, our whole life transformation series. For this particular segment of the series, we're going to deal with the divinity Seker or Sika, the divinity, the Ntoro, deity of gold. And in relation to that, financial calibration, financial purification, we deal with ancestral culture and our approach to economics, entrepreneurship, and so forth. So everything that we deal with regard to Akan Ancestral nation building, restoration, always rooted in our ancestral culture. So when we look at the term NKWAMUA, let's pull up this document right quick. The reason why we titled this specific piece NKWAMUA as far as a series. Switch it up. Okay, hold on one second. This is our NKWAMUA whole life journal. One of the 31 books I've published, and you can download all 31 of the books I've published on the NHOMA page on our website. They're all free downloads and so forth. So we have 31 books. I've also produced 2 documentary films. One of them we just released a few months back. That is on this YouTube channel, the Hoodoo film, Hoodoo, Akan Ancestral Religion in North America. But one of the books that we published is NKWAMUA Whole Life Journal. And let's just check out the intro to that. We say it's constructing whole life from the center of culture. So in the journal, we say NKWAMUA is a term comprised of 2 Akan words, Nkwa, which means life, vitality, strength. That is the same term as Ankh in ancient Kemet, meaning life, vitality, and strength, and so forth. Ankh in Kemet is Ankwa and Akan. Mua means whole, complete, good condition. NKWAMUA means a whole life. So as a journal, we address the whole life of the Afurakani, Afurite, African Black individual. Each issue, therefore, provides information on physical soundness, inclusive of natural foods, melanin and substance abuse, abstinence, and spiritual soundness, inclusive of emotional, mental, and psychological balance, centered in cultural awareness. We say NKWAMUA resounds the awareness of our individual and collective function purpose as a people. So we have a number of different topics that we address. We talk about a 7-part definition of abatum or melanin, for example. We have information about holistic health, plant physiognomy, and so forth. You see the brain and the walnuts are, related and so forth. And when you look at the functions of the brain and what the walnuts do with the omega-3 fatty acids and so forth, and how they're perfect brain food and so forth, we get into some detail about that. We have some true historical information. We talk about the pyramid of Saqqara, the step pyramid, and so forth, Imhotep, the Pera, Jaseru, and the fact that we are the ones who established the numerical system. Before the Hindus and Arabs, they stole the system from us. So this is the ancient Ntoro, the hieratic text, as well as the Demotic script and so forth. The Hindus and the Latin comes thousands of years later. We show the Pera, so-called Pharaoh Mentuhotep II, his wife, the Henut or Queen, Kawit. She's getting her hair twisted 4,000 years ago. So there are a number of things that we talk about in that journal, but we also utilize that piece. And let me just pull this up real quick. Within that context, we have an approach to disseminating information and teaching information and providing information to our people, whether it's youth or adults. It is a specific model, and we call it the Afura Whole Life Interventions Model, and it's based on our ancient cosmogram, the Per Ankh Nut, and the way we disseminate information through the seeding, rooting, sprouting, flowering, and harvesting process. This is an approach that we deal with. Hold on one second. So there's an entire approach to the whole life method of disseminating information. This is our whole life series, whole life transformation series. Let's get back to the original flyer. So that's an entire model. We talk about that in a number of different publications and so forth. But we want to use that specific model when we're talking about disseminating information and transforming our lives as Afurakani people. It's one thing to talk about our people need to build businesses. Our people need to establish their own institutions. Our people need to do this and do that. We can talk about these things all day long, but intellectual arguments don't motivate or move people. We need to be grounded in our culture. And when we're grounded in our culture, the things that we need to manifest, that we need to build, that we need to establish, that we need to defend, we can find the foundation of that within our culture. When we talk about media of exchange, Sika or gold is a media of exchange. It's also a sacred metal, as we're going to get into. There's a divinity that governs gold, which is a media of exchange and so forth. When we talk about ancestral economics, when we invoke the divinity, Sika or Seker and so forth, then that motivates us to align our activities with regard to media of exchange and, exchanging goods and services amongst each other, establishing value, transmitting value, engaging in balanced transactions and so forth. That's beneficial for us individually as well as collective. We tap into the force in nature that governs that kind of activity so we can establish businesses, economic activity, and in this context, entrepreneurial activity in harmony with our culture, rooted in our culture, in harmony with divine order and so forth, so it can benefit us individually and as a community as Afurakani people. Everything that we do, whether it's economic, whether it's political, whether it's social, whether it's, mental, psychological, emotional, it's always rooted in our ancestral culture, which is a reflection of divine order in Afurakani ancestral tradition and culture. Our culture is the divine acceptance, the law, the love of order, divine order, and the divine rejection of disorder and its purveyors. We accept those things, objects, deeds, and entities that we need to accept and incorporate in order to align our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. And we reject those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to repel that would otherwise place us out of harmony with divine order. When we talk about ancestral religion and spirituality and so forth, and ancestral religion and spirituality is the same thing. We talk about the ritual incorporation of divine law, the ritual restoration of divine balance. That means through the ritual process, we incorporate those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to incorporate in order to align our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. And through ritual, we reject those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to reject in order to restore balance to our thoughts, intentions, and actions. So the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance, these are the expansive and contractive poles of divine order. These are the expansive and contractive poles operationally of ancestral religion. That's the proper definition. No matter what expression it takes, whether it's the Akan tradition, Yoruba tradition, Igbo tradition, Ewe tradition, the Hoodoo tradition in North America, the Juju tradition in North America, the Voodoo tradition in North America, the Wanga tradition in North America, no matter where we exist in the world as Black people, the ritual incorporation of divine law, the ritual restoration of divine balance, the expansive and contractive poles of ancestral religion. We seek to align every thought, every intention, every action, every moment of every day with divine order. And when we make mistakes in a legitimate context, we engage the ritual process to incorporate law and restore balance so we can get back on track with our culture, which is aligning our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. And that includes every facet of life. That's what our culture is about, our way of life, our amamre, the way of the nation is about, and so forth. And that includes the way we approach economic development, entrepreneurship, engaging one another, building one another, edifying one another in the context of entrepreneurship, economic development, and so forth. So we're going to deal with the divinity Sokar, also called Sika, and how we, tune into that for our own purification, financial recalibration. So now this is an image of the divinity Sika, and sometimes he's shown in the form of a falcon. Sometimes he's shown as, the body of a man, the head of a falcon, and so forth. Let's look at this symbolism. Okay, give me 1 second. Okay, so first and foremost, we want to get into some definitions. So in the Akan language, we have a term Ebba and the term Abba, and they're related. So let's look at the definitions for that. Okay. Just want to make sure you can see that clearly on the screen. So you see Ebba, a piece or a figure of brass or other metal, a stone or seed used for a weight, and so forth. So you see metal, one of the terms for metal is Ebba. And then you see the term Abba, stone, rock. Then you also have the term, they have different definitions and usages for that. Hold on 1 second. And you'll also see that Abba is also the root of the term Abosom. That's one of the terms for divinity. Abba means stone, precious, but it also means something that's everlasting, because of course the stones that make up the inner core, outer core, mantle, upper mantle, lower mantle, crust of earth, and so forth, that is everlasting. So Abba means metal, but then you have Abba means stone. And of course, when you're talking about this notion of Sika or gold, that is the Abba, the metal that you find within the Abba, within the stone. And that's directly related to this notion of gold as well. Hold on 1 second. Let me pull this up for you. Okay, so of course, when we're talking about Sika, the term for gold in Akan and so forth, you're talking about the Ebal, the metal that is found encased within the stone and so forth, the Abba, and you have something very valuable that's encased within the stone. And then when you look in earth and so forth, which is, comprised of stone, of course, you have 70% of the earth is water and so forth, but then the, hard portion is stone, and encased within that stone, that abo, you have something of value. You have these metals, these abo, these minerals, and they radiate different frequencies of energy, just like we have mineral life within our bodies and so forth, and they radiate different frequencies of energy. So let's move a little bit further for this definition, the direct relationship between gold, the divinity, and so forth. Now you have a set of figures in Akan culture called Abramo, which is Abram and Bo, the stones that are Abram, that are inlaid, and so forth. So when you look at that, you see these brass implements, and these are called Abrambo or Abramu and so forth, but they are the quote unquote gold weights in Akan culture. In Akan culture, we utilize gold dust as our media of exchange. That was the money, was gold dust. And in order to pay for something, to purchase something, you had to have certain amounts of gold dust. If you use today's terms, if something costs 1 gram of gold dust or 2 grams of gold dust or 5 grams of gold dust and so forth, then you had to weigh the gold dust. So the Akan merchant would have a number of different gold weights. Now, some people would just have a square gold weight that was 1 quote unquote gram, another square larger gold weight that's 2 grams, another square larger gold weight that was 5 grams. They'll put that on the little scale. They'll put enough gold dust, and once it balances out, you have 1 gram of gold dust or 2 grams or 5 grams and so forth. We went further, and instead of just having little squares and so forth, we have Abramu. Some of them are shaped in the form of sacred animal totems. Some of them are shaped in the form of human beings. Some of them are shaped in the form of parts of nature, the sun, moon, other features of creation. There are hundreds of gold weights. They're all sacred symbolism. All of them have specific names, and they are literally a catalog of everything that exists in creation. So when you see the gold weight, you see its form, you see the ebe or the proverb associated with that specific gold weight. It is literally a dictionary or encyclopedia of the entire universe. It's also an encyclopedia of the way we need to function as Afro-Akani people in creation. So these sacred symbols comprise a corpus of knowledge that's infinite within Akan ancestral culture. It's also a form of adebisa or divination. So let me switch over right quick and give you an example of that. Hold on 1 second. In fact, I want to download this real quick. This is a short video that we did, and I just want to make sure you can see it. And this is a specific video when we were in the University of Pennsylvania's Museum on Afro-Akani culture. And part of the exhibit had actual gold weights from the Akan tradition. Hold on a second. All right, let me switch over to that. Just so you can see an example of that. And I took this with my cell phone, but it was just a specific exhibit. I twisted it sideways, but these are the actual gold weights. It's the same images that you see that will show on the screen. These are the actual, living images. But those weights that you see there, symbols, the same Adinkra symbols that you see with sacred proverbs, sacred wisdom teachings, dealing with government, dealing with, balanced relationships, marriage, raising children, spirituality. These different symbols, as we said, is a corpus of knowledge that governs all aspects of creation, all aspects of human interaction in a harmonious way, proverbial wisdom, and so forth. Now, but let's get back to our document. So this is just a representation of those Sika gold weights and so forth. And you'll see that representation now. So the Akan term for gold is Sika. And there's also a divinity named Bosom Sika. That means the deity Sika. Today, they'll translate the name Sika, or in fact, let me show you this document right quick. All right. They'll translate the word Sika as money, but in the past we used gold as money. So in this document, for example, talk about Ajekum notes that that Akan clan names are based on the 12 patrilineal clans of the Akans, which are Bosom Buru, Bosom Pra, Bosom Chwe, Bosom Nketia, and then you'll see Bosom Po, Bosom Gerebe, Bosom Krete, Bosom Ayesu, Bosom Akom, Bosom Konsi, Bosom Ayesu, Bosom Akom, Bosom Afram, and Bosom Sika. According to Ajekum, these were deities the Akan ancestors used to worship in the past, but it's not just the past. When you see Bosom Po, for example, the term Bosom is the term for deity. Just like in Yoruba, the term Orisha is for deity, the term for deity, goddess or god, divine spirit, force in creation, the spirits that animate the sun, moon, earth mother. For example, Asase Afua is the fertile earth mother divinity. She is the Abosom, the divinity of the fertile earth. There's the Abosom of the Oriya, the sun. The male Abosom of the ocean is called Bosom Po, meaning the deity Opo. The female divinity of the ocean is Epo Abena. She's the Abosom, the divinity Epo Abena. You have Abosom of rivers, Abosom of fire, water, atmosphere, and so forth. So one of those divinities, Bosom Po, is Bosom, the deity of Opo of the ocean. Bosom Sika is the Abosom, the divinity of Sika. That's the divinity or the god Sika. And what does Sika mean? Sika means gold. So let's switch back over. So Bosom Sika means the deity Sika, the deity that governs gold. Now, he's called Sika in Akan, or Nana Sika, or Nana Bosom Sika, Nana meaning elder, honored elder, Nana Sika, or Nana Bosom Sika. That's how he's invoked and so forth, and pouring libation and, saying ritual prayers and so forth. He's invoked as Nana Sika or Nana Bosom Sika. So now, that is the divinity Sika or Sikara or Sikri, but Sika is spelled with the bolt, which is S, the horizontal bolt, the bowl with the lip, which is the K sound, and the open mouth, which is the R sound. So SKR, they didn't know if it was Seker or Sokar or Sokar and so forth. But we know the proper vocalization because we still invoke this divinity on a daily basis. His name is Sika. In ancient Kemet, it was Sikar or Sikara, but we call him Sika in Akan. This is that divinity. When I was in the temple of Seti and Abju, so-called Abydos, a few years ago, I took these images with my iPhone of the divinity Sika. So in both instances, and you'll see, by the way, this is Da Insu Hetep N Atef Sikar. That means the sovereign, the Ainsu, the king, gives an offering to his father, Sika or Sikara. So this is divinity, this is Seti, and he's giving an offering to the divinity. That's a typical offering formula. The D or Da Nsu Hetep. The king gives an offering to his father and so forth. Here's another offering, and here you see Seti doing a couple of things. So this is an incense holder. The term for incense in ancient Kemet is Sa Ntoro. Sa Ntoro. The term Ntoro means divinity. They'll say nectar because they don't know how to pronounce it, but it's Ntoro. And in Akan, we still use the term Ntoro, meaning divinity. But Sa Ntoro means to make or cause. Sa Ntoro, divine. So when you use incense and you burn it and you release the smoke and so forth, you're making or causing something to be divine, or you're divinizing something, you're purifying something, you're making the room pure, sacred, and so forth. So he's engaged in the Sa Ntoro ritual. So this is a incense or Sa Ntoro holder. You see the smoke rising from the incense there, but you also see him engaged in the Oshuye function, which is pouring libation. So that's a ritual invocation. The same thing that we do today. We have an ancestral shrine set up, or a shrine, a Nkomre for a divinity. We burn, the Sa Ntoro, the incense and so forth. Once the smoke is released, we invoke the divinity through ritual prayer and chant. We pour libation. The spirit of the divinity comes down and takes up residence in the shrine space, and then we can have a full communication. So we do that every day, including with the divinity Sika. An Akan person invoking Nana Sika today will be doing very, very similar things, ritually to invoke that divinity. So they'll talk about him. Originally the god of the duat of Memphis, really Mennefer, later the death god par excellence. So you see this sacred boat right here. You see the little symbol of the falcon, sacred animal totem, and he's in the boat. When the sun sets in the west and goes in the underworld, one of the boats that Afura enters into is the Hinnu boat of the divinity Sika, Sikar. You'll see the little head of the falcon on the top. This is from the papyrus of Ani. So what they will talk about is, for example, when we see the divinity Ra in the form of Afura, and let me pull up our other document real quick, just so you can see a reference point. And we've talked about this in the previous Okay, we're going to switch over real quick to one of the books we published, the Afuraka Afurakai, Origin of the Term Africa book. So in this book, we show that the term Africa comes from Afuraka Afurakai, and I published this book a number of years ago. But to show the divinity Ra, so you'll see Ra with the head of the falcon sitting in the solar boat, sailing from the eastern horizon. The Aten, or the sun, is in the boat. You see Ra in the form of a falcon-headed divinity sitting in the boat with the solar disk on his head and so forth. So he sails in the boat of the Aten from the eastern horizon across, the earth to set in the west. But when the sun sets in the west and the boat goes into the underworld and the solar disk penetrates the earth and goes into the underworld for the 12 hours of the night, then Ra changes form from this falcon, avian, flying, animal totem divinity. Then he takes the form of the earth divinity, the flat-horned ram, and he is called Afu Ra. Ra moving through the Afu, Ra moving through matter, or Afu, or the flesh and so forth. And the spiritual force is moving through the underworld for the 12 hours of the night, sailing through the underworld in the night boat of the Aten of the sun, until in the 12th hour it gets to the eastern horizon, then comes up out of the earth. He transforms from a land animal, flat-horned ram, back to a falcon-headed divinity, goes up in the sky and switches to the day boat and sails across the sky for the 12 hours of the day. So that cycle of flying through the sky in the solar boat for the 12 hours of the day, from the eastern horizon to the western horizon, setting in the west, switching boats to get into the night boat, which is the Sektet boat, sails the 12 hours of the night in the underworld, bringing light and illumination to the spirits in the spirit realm, and then getting back to the eastern horizon and changing boats. When he gets to the 5th hour of the night in the Duat, in the spirit realm, they talk about how the 5th hour of the night is governed by the divinity Sika, and that 5th hour of the night is in the deep, dark place. It's a sandy region. So he switches from the Sektet boat into the Hindu boat of Sokar, so he can move through that treacherous region of the sand and deep darkness and so forth. He protects himself from the denizens of the spirit realm that are negative and so forth, so he can move that life force energy through the underworld and so forth. And Sika protects him and so forth, and protects the other spirits, the deceased spirits of our ancestresses and ancestors who lived in harmony with divine order. They are in the spirit realm and so forth, and Sika protects them as well. So they call him the death divinity. But we want to show you that imagery. Now I want to show you an image of that from ancient Kemet. Hold on a second. All right. So when you look at this image, this is when I was in the temple of Ramesu VI, and I took this photograph and so forth. So you see Ra in the form of Afura. He's in the underworld and so forth, sailing in his boat, the night boat of the Aten, the sun and so forth, and he's moving along. When he gets to the 5th hour, as we said, there's a treacherous region and so forth, and he needs that essential extra protection. He gets into the Hindu boat of Sika, and that Hindu boat is this boat right here, and he moves through that sandy area. Now, let me also give you another short. I'm going to show you a video short right quick. So this is when we were in the temple of Ramesu the Sixth, and that particular image so that image that I just showed you the picture of, this is a video of that when I was in that particular temple. And throughout the temple of Ramesu the Sixth, you'll see the entire book of the Duat, all of the 12 hours of the night, where Afura is moving through these 12 hours and, you know, going from place to place. Just want you to see that actual imagery. So you'll see the entire, when they talk about the books of the Duat, yes, they're written on coffins, coffin texts and so forth. Yes, they're written in papyri, but the entire books of the Duat are also the Shat Duat, the book of what is in the spirit realm of the underworld and so forth. The entire book is written on the walls of the temples or the tombs and so forth. So when you have to go underground into these tombs, you go into long shafts underground. And once you get underground, you see that the entire text of these quote unquote books are on the walls of the tombs, walls and ceilings of the tombs. And of course, we document that, you know, primary documentation so we can bring that back for our people. So now let's get into, when you're talking about the solar energy going into the underworld, moving through the 12 hours of the night and so forth, and you get to that region of Sokar or Sika and so forth, the deep, dark, treacherous region, and it captures that solar energy. When you think about the solar energy in the underworld, physiologically, you're talking about the solar energy of Ra and Ra'at that moves throughout our system, that divine living energy becomes concretized within our body. The concretized solar energy within us is gold. That is the physical shrine of the spiritual force of Sika within our bodies. On earth, the concretization of the solar energy of Ra and Ra'at. And let me show you that as well. So you saw that image of Ra and so forth. And here's another image of Ra. This is the image of Ra. The creator of the universe. And this is his form as Afura with the solar disk, flathorn ram form. But we also have, which is very important, we have Ra'at, the creatress of the universe, the counterpart of Ra. And you see her with the solar disk on her head in that golden form and so forth, different images of Ra'at. So that is important. So the divine living energy of Ra and Ra'at, just like you have solar energy that you take in when you take in a deep breath, penetrates your system and so forth. But the spiritual force that is within that solar energy is Ra, the creative power on the masculine side, Ra'at, the creative power on the feminine side. That is the life force energy surging through you. You can communicate with Ra and Ra'at through the agency of that life force energy. Only Afurakani people can do that, of course, but we can be possessed by, communicate with these divinities, be empowered by them, have our energy replenished by them, giving guidance and direction by them and so forth. And we pour libation and give offerings. Just like if you go to your great grandmother or great grandfather, go to their home, sit down, give them some food, give them something to eat, you know, some pure water to drink and so forth. And then they sit down and give you some wisdom, or they lay hands and heal you and so forth and transfer their energy to you. And we give offerings to Ra, offerings to Ra'at, engage in ritual prayer, ritual chant, ritual song, ritual dance and so forth to invoke and provoke the energy of Ra and Ra'at. Then they dispense their energy to us. They replenish ours. fortify us and so forth, give us guidance, direction, admonitions, and so forth. So the solar energy of Ra and Ra'at, when it penetrates the earth and is moving through the underworld, that solar energy becomes concretized as what we call Sika, or gold. Gold in the earth, gold within the, underworld of earth and so forth, is the concretization of solar energy. And when we invoke the divinity Sika, we can release the force of that solar energy, no different than when if you have some resins, some incense and so forth, you have them on the shelf, you can smell it. You have some rock incense, like some frankincense or myrrh, some hedju or antiu, as it's called in Kemet. You can smell it. You can see that, the white resin, the red resin, and so forth. But if you activate it by putting fire to it, then you release the essence and the entire room fills up with smoke. That energy you can breathe in, and the incense and the properties of that can affect your organs and systems and glands and so forth. Once you activate it, then the energy is released. When you invoke the divinity Sika through the agency of Sika, of gold and so forth, the spiritual force that animates Sika or gold, you invoke that divinity's energy, and then you can communicate with that force in creation. And for us, that is one of the things that we do and we have always done when we're talking about economic development in a sound, cultural, harmonious way. Invoke the divinity that governs the media of exchange, which is gold, that is pure, incorruptible, and so forth. So you can engage in economic activity in a harmonious way with your people. And if you make mistakes or you find some discrepancies, you find a way to, reconcile that so you can get back on track with order, so you can benefit the community in a harmonious way, and you can rectify issues in a balanced fashion, as opposed to just using economic development to feed your own greed or lust, which destroys people or destroys the environment in the process. We don't engage in economic activity in that way. So let's look at the cosmology of Sika, Sekar, and how it's directly related to this notion of ancestral economics. Now, first, just something very quick that most people are unaware of. When we talk about gold, in the earth, let's switch over real quick. There's always what happens on a macrocosmic level always happens on the microcosmic level and so forth. So we also have, just like you have copper and zinc and iron and so forth in your body, these various minerals and metals, we also have gold in our body. So as you can see here, although iron is the most abundant metal in our body, traces of gold can be found in the human body in places such as the brain, heart, blood, and joints. If pure gold is collected in the human body, weighing 70 kilograms, it can be up to 0.2 milligrams of gold. So you have this shrine of Sika within your body. And hold on one second, let me switch to another. And then you will also have, hold on a second, numerous articles, publications talking about gold and talking about, nanoparticles and so forth. But this article, for example, talking about gold nanoparticles for modulating neuronal behavior. And so they go into detail of talking about the effects of gold. Sometimes, there are treatments that people are using nanoparticles for gold and so forth. But it mimics the natural function and roll of gold inside the body. And just like we have gold deep within us in our body and is directly related to the joints and neurons and so forth to make sure that they're functional, properly functional, the same occurs within the earth and so forth. So let's look at another piece right quick. Just switch that back out. And as you can see here, of course, says gold has several properties that set it apart from most other metals found in nature. First, in its purest state, that is without a trace of any other metal, it is virtually incorruptible. So when you see metals that they talk about that are incorruptible and do never rust and so forth, and they're pure today as they were thousands of years ago, and you see the golden masks of the mummies and so forth, and 5,000 years later they're just as pure as they were before. Gold as well as platinum are those incorruptible metals. And it's the same thing when you talk about what's going on in the body. The divine solar energy of Ra and Ra, the Creator and Creatress, becomes concretized as gold within the earth, concretized as gold within the body, and therefore that gold becomes the shrine of the spirit of Ra and the spirit of Ra within the body, but it is encapsulated by a spiritual force, and that force that encapsulates that and holds that energy is the divinity Sika. So when you invoke Sika by name, you release that energy, and then you have access to it to do what we need to do in different ways for health reasons, but also for communal health reasons, which means economic development in this context. So let's look at who Sika is. Now, you'll read a number of different things about the divinity. We'll look at things that they say about him, but then we'll talk about what the real lived culture actually is. Now, they'll give different names. Sacred region of Menefer. Sika or Sikara gives the name to the region of Sakara. Today, when you see the Great Step Meru or the Great Step Pyramid in the region of Sakara and so forth, this is where you'll see, this is the sacred sanctuary in Menefer, sacred sanctuary of the divinity Seker. And in fact, let's show that real quick. Give me a second. I want to show you a quick video of that. So, in the region of the Great Step Pyramid that's named after him, you'll see some interesting information. Hold on a second. All right. Just make sure you can see that. Okay, so that is the region of the Great Step Meru, the Great Step Pyramid. You see this great sandy region and so forth. It's akin to what's happening in the underworld in the region of Sika or Seker, the great sandy region in the 5th hour of the night in the Duat and so forth. And he's the one that governs that region. Now, so let's go back to the document. All right, so you will see that they talk about him in the region of sacred God, sacred necropolis in Menefer, so-called Memphis and so forth. Now look at what they say. Although the meaning of the name remains uncertain, the Egyptians in the pyramid text linked his name to the anguish cry of Al-Sar and Al-Set. To them, the name is uncertain. To us, we still invoke Nana Sika on a daily basis. We know what his function is. We saw in the Akan language, the term Sika means gold, that's sacred stone, or eba, or metal eba, within the stone, Abba, just like that solar energy deep within your stones or your bones, the marrow in your bones and so forth. And you have gold within your joints and so forth. You have the eba, the metal, Sika, or gold inside of your Abba, in your stones or bones. And we say the same thing, of course, about Sika, the divinity in ancient Kemet. Now, they talk about his appearance, depicted as a mummified hawk. We saw that, and sometimes as a mound from which the head of the hawk appears, really a falcon. Here he is called he who is on his sand. Sometimes he is shown in the Hindu bark, that Hindu boat that we show, which is an elaborate sledge for the negotiating of the sandy necropolis, or city or region of the deceased and so forth, the underworld. One of his titles was He of Restau, which means the place of openings or tomb entrances. Now, in the New Empire, the Book of the Underworld, which is the Shat Imduat, he is shown standing on the back of a serpent between two spread wings as an expression of freedom. This suggests a connection with resurrection or perhaps a satisfactory transit of the underworld. Despite this, the region of the underworld associated with Sokar was seen as difficult, sandy terrain called the Imhet in ancient Kemet. So they'll say through his association with Ptah, has a connection with artisans. In the Book of Coming Forth by Day, misnomer Book of the Dead, he is said to fashion silver bowls, and that Tanis or Tanuit and so forth, a silver coffin of Sheshank. The second has been discovered with the iconography of Sika. But they talk about the festivals in his honor and so forth. But let's get to the other portion. In the journey of Ra, the myth used to explain what happens during the night when Ra travels through the underworld, according to the myth. Sika rules the fifth kingdom of the night, which is called Hidden, and is tasked with punishing the souls of evildoers by throwing them into a boiling lake. And of course, when they talk about that boiling lake, when you see the images of the underworld and the walls of Kemet, you'll see that they have little factories of fire and so forth. Boiling lake, when they talk about a lake of fire in the underworld, so-called hell and so forth in the Christian and Muslim and Jewish, traditions, which are all fake, of course, with their fictional deities, Yahweh and Allah and Jesus, Yeshua, and so forth. They stole this imagery from ancient Kemet, and they are still on the walls of the tombs, which we showed you in ancient Kemet. Now, hold on a second. As part of the festivals in Akhet, his followers wore strings of onions around their necks, showing the underworld aspect of him. Onions were used in embalming people, sometimes the skin, sometimes the entire onion. When the skin was used, it would be placed on the eyes and inside the ears and so forth. That's still used in the Hoodoo tradition today. Hold on one second. Now, there's another piece that we wanted to touch on. Hold on one second. Hold on. Give me 1 second. I'm going to pull up this other document that we had up before. And of course, if you have any questions, you can post them in the chat room. There's one particular piece we wanted to pull out. Okay. So this is the portion we wanted to touch on quickly. And this is the direct relationship that we wanted to focus on right here. So they're talking about the same, touching on some of the same points here, but the point that we wanted to focus on that's another image of the Hindu boat with the divinity in the form of a sacred falcon with the solar disk on his head. That's the Hindu boat, 5th hour of the night in the underworld and so forth. Now, they also talk about, of course, he's found in the Meru text, the pyramid text, the earliest religious text in existence. So, Sokar or Sika is mentioned regularly in the pyramid texts in his own right, but from the Middle Empire, Middle Kingdom, he was often merged with Ptah because they work together. Ptah is deep within the core of Earth, in the inner core and so forth, and he's deep within the inner core, the marrow of the bones and so forth. And Sika is there as well. Ptah and Sika, Ptah and Seker working together represented the soil and its power to create life, as Ptah was considered to be the patron of artisans. Sika became specifically the patron of goldsmiths. Now, the reason, of course, why that's important is it goes back to our living culture, as we mentioned in the beginning. I don't want to switch back over to that document. Now, this is why it's important to deal with a living culture and so forth. They know that Sika has to do with the deceased, the spirits in the underworld and so forth. They know he has the boat moving through the sandy region in the dark. They know that he's connected with Ptah, deep within the core of Earth and so forth. They know he has something to do not only with the metal gold, but those who are goldsmiths. And he became a patron divinity of goldsmiths. But they couldn't put all of that together because just reading certain texts, you can read what our people had to say about these divinities. But if you don't have a relationship with these divinities, you can't really speak much further than, hey, this is what they said. They said this about the deity, and that's it. We can talk about the actual function of the divinity because we still invoke the divinity on a regular basis. And every group, every Afurakani group has, a name for this divinity in their tradition because it's a force in creation. But in Akan, we have the same name today, Sika, that we had in ancient Kemet, Sikara, or Sikar, and so forth. And the fact that we use the word Sika in the general sense as the word for gold, but it's also the name of the divinity that governs gold. And in ancient Kemet, the name divinity Sika is the divinity that's the patron divinity of those who work gold and so forth. We have a direct relationship, a direct connection linguistically, cosmologically, but the lived culture. People are even named after this divinity in Akan culture and so forth. If this is their patriclan, so he governs the patriclan, the Bosom Sika patriclan. There are 12 different patriclans that are governed by 12 different divinities in Akan culture, depending on who your father is and so forth, and the divinity that governs your patriclan line or circle, then you carry that energy. Some people, like myself, are of the Bosom Afram patriclan, so the deity Afram is the divinity that governs my patriclan. Some are born under Bosom Sika. That Ntoro group, a patriclan group, is governed by Nana Sika, and they invoke that divinity on his sacred day, just like we invoke the divinity Afram on Memenida, which is Saturday, which is his sacred day. Bosom Sika has his own sacred day and so forth. Not that he's not operant on all days, but there's certain days that are, more optimal for invocation and so forth. So this is a lived culture. Now, and of course, people are still, I don't know if you can hear that, but of course, people are still, our people are still brainwashed. They're still, using up those fireworks that they purchased from the Mexicans, a few days back. And we're talking about media of exchange. We're talking about ancestral economics. So this is an example of the direct contradiction of that. So you have some Mexicans who have nothing but disdain for Black people. They'll come on the outskirts of a Black community. They'll go to Home Depot, get some lumber. They'll build a small little kiosk right on the outskirts of a Black community, build a little kiosk and so forth, throw a little sign up, come get your fireworks. Then you'll see Black people lined up, including Black people, poor Black people, using the little money that they have to give to these Mexicans who have nothing but disdain for us and so forth. We give them thousands of dollars after they set up a kiosk within, 30 minutes and so forth. They do this on around July 4th, and now they have another day to do it because they do it before Juneteenth now. Now that Juneteenth is a holiday, they do it twice a year. They show up in the community twice a year now, a couple of weeks before Juneteenth, a couple of weeks before July 4th, build a quick little kiosk. All of us line up, spend thousands of dollars. So what they receive is thousands of dollars from the Black community, and they take it and drain the community. What we receive in return are a number of different products that will explode into thin air. So we're giving them value, and they're giving us something that will explode. That's insane. So when we're talking about media of exchange, we have the ambramu, the gold weights and so forth, and we use gold dust. Sometimes we use nserewa, which are cowrie shells. We've done that. Sometimes other forms of crystals and so forth and minerals for money. But in our Akan culture, it became standard, and we were known across West Africa for over 1,000 years to have a little scale, have gold dust, have a series of gold weights and so forth. And what we would do is weigh the gold dust and use that to purchase goods and services and exchange and so forth. And the things that we would, receive in return for us giving gold dust to someone, what we receive is something that can benefit us, whether it's herbs, medicine, materials to build and so forth. It's always a balanced exchange of some good or service that's going to benefit us, individually or collectively as an Oman, as an Afrikani Oman or nation. Now, let me show you something with regard to the Abramo, the gold weights, and spirituality as well. And this is a section in our film Hoodoo, Akan Ancestral Religion in North America. So let me pull that up right quick. All right, so this is our second documentary film. We released it just this past October. So we have two documentary films out now. The first documentary film we released a few years back, also in October. We actually won an award for Best Original Documentary at the Kwanzaa Film Festival in New York. We also were accepted at the film festival, Pembroke Taparelli Film Festival in Los Angeles. When we released the first film, this is our second film. And most likely, once it's entered in certain film festivals, we'll probably win an award for that as well. But There's a particular section when we're talking about the Abramu or the gold weights. I want to get to that section just to give some context. Hold on a second. Okay. So in this particular segment, within our Akan culture, the same term, Ja, meaning father, Edja or Ja, meaning father, Ja, meaning inheritance. We also have the packet called Ja. Inside of that packet that's passed on from father to son is the inheritance of the father. You find the Abramu or so-called gold weights that represent the sum of human knowledge in their symbolism. They're also used to weigh gold dust that has to do with economic power, but they're also connected to the Patron. Okay. So that right there is, we're talking about the transmission from the father. So we have the matriclan side and the patriclan side. There's a female divinity that governs our matriclan ancestresses and ancestors in the matriclan side that we inherit through our mitochondrial DNA. So there's a female divinity we invoke. On the patriclan side, the spiritual force that animated the sperm cell and so forth, the patriclan divinity, depending on what clan you're from, and that people who are descended from that specific clan carry similar attributes and similar phenotype, similar attributes and so forth. They're governed by a specific divinity. Some, for example, are part of the Bosom Sika clan, the divinity Sika's clan. Myself is Bosom Afram, the divinity Afram. Other people have, different divinities and so forth. But just like there's a passing on of the DNA from the father on the Y chromosomal side, the father also passes on a packet called the Ja or Ja Parie. It includes the wealth that's transferred from father to son, but also this packet of this is an open packet right here. The scale and the gold weights with the symbols that represent the sum of knowledge for the clan and so forth, that the young person has to memorize these different proverbs, symbols, the wisdom of the clan, all contained within those symbols. So that packet, when you open it up, it represents the physical wealth of the clan and so forth that's passed from the father to the son and so forth intergenerationally. So he has the gold weights, he has a scale, gold dust and so forth. So he can engage in, economic activity, but he also has to study these symbols that deal with plant life, animal life, mineral life, Afurakani, human life, human interaction, social interaction, political interaction, spiritual development, spiritual cultivation, our relationship with the spirits that govern creation, the Abosom, our Nananoma and Samanfo, our spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors. That's all encased within that packet that's transferred from father to son. That is the Ja or Ja Parie. In Hoodoo, of course, this is called the Ja or the Jack Ball and so forth. So we were showing that in Akan, just like you have the Moja and the Ja, the matriclan divinity and patriclan divinity, in Hoodoo it became the Mojo and the Jack. And we talk about how the Mojo is a matriclan talisman, the Jack or Jack Ball is a patriclan talisman. That's because the Moja in Akan is the matriclan divinity, and the Ja is the patriclan divinity. So, but that is important because when we're talking about engaging in economic activity, first and foremost, we want to align ourselves with our Nsamanfo, our ancestresses and ancestors, many of whom were great, builders of civilizations, those who were businessmen, businesswomen, engaged in trade and commerce, not only domestically, but, internationally, going from different Afurakani nations. We had great marketplaces and so forth. exchanging goods and services, not just bartering, but also using gold dust as, currency and so forth. This is how we built nations, expanded nations, built empires, expanded empires, and so forth. When we're engaged in the same kind of activity today, and we want to have a cohesive, developed, independent Afro-American or African economy amongst us. We always talk about the dollar only circulating 1 or 2 times in the Black community, whereas other, groups, the dollar circulates 20, 25 times before it leaves their community and so forth. As soon as we get paid, we take the money we have and go outside of our community and spend the majority of it, as opposed to going to a Black-owned gas station, a Black-owned, bakery or coffee shop, a Black-owned grocery store or a health food store, a Black-owned restaurant, Black-owned, clothing store and so forth. If you need herbs, order them from a Black-owned business, a Black woman-owned business. There are a number of different things that we can, use. We can spend our money. If you buy soap, of course, hair care products, deodorant, clothing, medicine, certain foods. If you do all of that in the course of a weekend after you get paid, you can spend that in 7 different Black-owned businesses, some in your community and some online, or you can spend that money at 7 different white businesses and give all the money we have to the whites and their offspring. When we talk about goods and services, media of exchange, Afro-American culture, it has to be grounded in our ancestral culture. When you have a spiritual practice that incorporates the forces in nature, inclusive of the divinity Sika, then you have a natural inclination. When you invoke this divinity on a regular basis, when you pour libation, includes Sika, and Akan is Sika, and ancient Kemet Sikar. So if you don't know what clan you come from and you utilize the language of ancient Khanid and Kemet, which we all have a connection to, and your ancestresses and ancestors from Kemet and Khanid, Egypt and Nubia, will direct you as to who your most recent ancestral clan is. So if you're Yoruba, if you're Basa, if you're Fula, you're Fang, and you pour libation to your ancient Kemeti ancestresses and ancestors, they will not only connect with you, which they've always done since you were a child, whether you knew it or not, but they will direct you as to what nation you came from over the past 500 plus years. Did your people leave from ancient Kemet and settle in the region that became what is known as the Yoruba Empire, or the Igbo, or the Basa, or the Akan, or the Bakongo, or the Fang, and so forth? They will share that with you, as well as your Igbo or Yoruba or Akan, Nsama for ancestresses and ancestors. Because once we moved from the east to the west, we moved in certain regions, we began to indigenize ourselves to those regions. That means the plant life and mineral life and animal life we incorporated in our bodies for food and medicine and so forth, that also transformed our cells, made us indigenized to that region of the Earth Mother and so forth. And therefore, our clan expression changed slightly. When we were forced into the Western Hemisphere, we indigenized ourselves by aligning with the Earth Mother, the manner in which her energy is expressed in this region of her body in the Western Hemisphere, the plant life, animal life, mineral life that we were familiar with on the continent that exists over here as well, but also certain plants and minerals and certain animals that don't exist on the continent but exist here. We had to learn from the forces in nature and the Earth Mother divinities. Who are these plants? What divinities govern these specific plants we never saw before? These specific minerals we never saw before. These specific animals like the possum we never saw before. And we learned that from the Abosom, the divinities as they manifest in this region. We incorporate that knowledge as part of our culture. So everything we brought with us from the continent, as well as what we've learned since we've been here, that comprises our unique expression of Afro-American culture as Black people in North America. So we have everything we brought with us in our blood circles, our religious practices, plus what we've learned interacting with this region of the Earth Mother's body. So we have a unique expression of culture that's different from our relatives on the continent, as well as in the Caribbean and South America, in Europe and so forth. Black people in these different areas, we have our unique expressions of ancestral culture, even though we're all connected at the root. And that includes the way we interact with one another. We instinctively draw on that divine order, the divinity that governs gold, value, media of exchange, and so forth. When we invoke that divinity, then we engage in economic activity that's holistic, that benefits us individually and collectively. If we go against that or veer away from that, we're imitating the whites and their offspring. We engage in economic activity just to generate money, even if the product and or service is detrimental to the community or promotes ignorance or perpetuates self-destructive behavior and so forth. As long as we're making money and we believe that's okay, we're engaged in self-destructive behavior that will eventually take root and rot within the community internally and will express itself externally. But we have a different approach because we deal with our culture, economic activity from an ancestral perspective. Okay, so that is the information we wanted to share with you all tonight. If you have any questions, you can post them in the chat room. There's also, 1 second. We also want to share our website, part of that activity that we're talking about. And the manner in which we approach these, various forms of economic development is rooted in this model. We talked about the whole life journal. And for those who didn't see that, let me pull that up once again. All right, so for those who didn't see that when we first logged on, let me switch that up for you. So this is the NKWAMUA Whole Life Journal. So when you saw the flyer for the, for this particular broadcast, and we said NKWAMUA Whole Life Transformation series, and in this series we're talking about the divinity Sika. This book, the NKWAMUA Whole Life Journal, one of the 31 books that I've published, all 31 books, including this one, is a free download from our website. But we're talking about a number of different things in this publication. But part of it, and what's critical for this particular broadcast, the whole life approach, physical soundness and spiritual soundness centered in cultural awareness. That's what NKWAMUA whole life means. And when we approach business, entrepreneurship, and promoting that in our community, ancestral economics and so forth, physical soundness, spiritual soundness, rooted and centered in cultural awareness, NKWAMUA whole life, this is what we're talking about. So let me switch that back over. So when you see what we've published, and you'll see this on our website as well. We're finishing up the first course. We did a 4-week online course, the SUSUW course, which is a meditation instructor certification. So we're certifying people in the practice of SUSUW, which is the ancient Afro-Akani term for meditation. We have our own approach to meditation that predates Hinduism by thousands of years and so forth. Eurasians didn't come up with meditation. They didn't come up with ritual practice. They didn't come up with anything. They learned about that when our people migrated to India, and we continued the practice we had in ancient Khani to Kemet. So even you'll see Amenhotep, the son of Hapu, seated in the traditional meditative posture and so forth. You'll see all over the murals of Kemet in statuary and so forth. But we have a meditation instructor certification. In addition to the 31 books I've published and the documentaries, we've taught 40 online courses. All of them are archived. This is a new course we started teaching in the context of certification. We've been practicing SUSUW or meditation for the past 30 years. But we've been teaching. We first published on SUSUW 20 years ago, and we've been teaching on SUSUW or meditation for the past 20 years. We've been practicing for 30, but started teaching on that 20 years ago. You'll see a portion of that in our book, Patah Sasatim, the educational curriculum for youth and adults that we first released as a publication in 13,005 or so-called 2005. That began when we were teaching in the schools in Chicago and so forth, and after school programs, and later with adults, and then also in Washington, D.C. We continued that practice with youth as well as adults. So we published on SUSUW meditation in the Patah Sasatim book. That's one of the 31 books, and we first published that 19 years ago, but we were teaching on it 20 years ago, but we went ahead and published it 19 years ago. So we're taking that experience that we've been teaching and talking about for the past 20 years and putting it into the certification course, primarily because people asked about that. People are getting certification courses, but very often they have to go to some European organization, some Eurasian organization. They'll get half accurate information and a lot of misinformation about meditation. And they spend thousands of dollars to get these certifications so that they can use the certification as a credential to go to schools and places of employment and other places to, get paid to teach meditation. So people have asked us about this, if we certified, and for some years we did not. We decided to do that this year. So you can take this certification. It's a 4-week course. We're finishing up the first course that we did in a few days, and a new 4-week course for those who missed the first one is beginning on Wednesday, July 10th. So the next SUSUW Meditation Instructor Certification course is this Wednesday, July 10th coming up. It's a 4-week course. We go over the NKWAMUA Whole Life Journal. We also go over some of the other 31 books that we have in the context of teaching this practice. It's introductory. It's a way, introductory in the context of when you go out to teach these sessions to youth as well as adults, you're introducing them to this practice of SUSUW from an African or Afro-Akaini cultural standpoint. So you can go into schools, after school programs, elementary schools, high schools, even in, pre-K. They have little meditation sessions for kids. The reason why even conventional schools, as well as independent charter schools and so forth, are starting to incorporate meditation at the beginning of the day after the first bell, and then after lunch and so forth. They give them like 5 or 10 minutes of meditation because they learn scientifically that through research that it enhances learning outcomes, helps them to be more focused throughout the course of the morning or afternoon and so forth. So in schools, after school programs, they'll have somebody come out, have you do a 15 or 20 minute session. They'll pay you $100 or $200 or $300 to conduct that session. In an after school program, they have budgets for people to come out to teach chess or yoga or African dance or African drumming or, a basketball coach or martial arts. Or some of them, one day a week, they'll have someone teaching meditation. One day a week, they have them teaching martial arts. One day a week, they have them teaching, some other, practice. But they have a budget set aside. Some of them ask for credentials. Some of them do not. Some of them ask for, it's word of mouth. And if you have a reputation for doing good work, then they'll let you come in. But some other ones, it's not word of mouth. They just need a credential. They'll see that you have a certificate, that you went through a process. You were trained in the practice of certification. You have, or meditation, you have a certification, and you can utilize that as a credential. The same is true of places of employment. Because of the research that's been published over the past 20 years, many employers will have a seminar. They have the employees go to a seminar once a month and so forth. And then they'll have somebody come out and talk about how SUSUW or meditation can enhance productivity. You have some people at human services organizations, when they have group therapy sessions, they'll have somebody come out and teach, a 15-minute or 20-minute session on SUSUW meditation so that their clients can overcome anxiety and depression and, dealing with weight loss or drug addiction and so forth. There are many, many applications where SUSUW is, beneficial. And because of the work that's been done over mainly the past 20 years, people are going out and they're utilizing their certifications sometimes for side, income, but some people, it's their sole source of income. You get a school or an after-school program on Monday, a place of employment on Tuesday, a human services organization that has a women's shelter on Wednesday, another school on Thursday, 4 days a week, you make a couple of $100 per day, you make $800 a week, $3,200 a month to teach meditation, basically 40 minutes to an hour per day for 4 days a week. So people are setting up those kinds of, contractual agreements. And we talk about that and how to set that up in the class, as well as teaching meditation, SUSUW, from a grounded cultural perspective. So that course is coming up Wednesday, July 10th. So you still have a chance to register. Registration is open to Afurakani, of course, Black people only, as all of our courses are open to our people only and so forth. So you still have a chance to register for that. And we're doing that so we can have something beneficial for the community. It's also economic development. It's entrepreneurship. It's a method for you to become self-employed. You benefit yourself, but you're also benefiting the community at the same time. That's an example of utilizing Sika, media of exchange, in this context, money, but we're talking about gold, media of exchange, worth and value from an ancestrally grounded, rooted perspective. So, okay. So I'm going to just want to check the chat room to make sure we didn't miss anything. Okay. Okay, the more I listen to your teaching, the memories come back slowly but surely. And that's because, we've all engaged in these activities. This is not the first time we've been here. Bebra, which is the Akan term for reincarnation. All Afro-Akani ancestral cultures understand the reality of Bebra. We're reborn through our blood circles. So in the past, before we were living in America, the last time you were living on Earth a couple hundred years ago, you may have been living in the Yoruba Empire or the Akan Empire or the Fang Empire, the Fula Empire, and so forth. You're speaking your language, practicing your culture, engaged in these ritual practices. When you were engaged in business and so forth, you may have been using gold dust as currency or cowrie shells as currency and so forth. So that's part of your ancestral memory, your epigenetic memory. So then when you transition and your children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren are growing and developing, and some of them, somebody gets enslaved and taken into North America and so forth, and you as an ancestress are watching what they're going through, and then one of your great-great-great-great-great-great-granddaughters grows up and gets married, and when it's time for her to get pregnant, she draws your spirit back into the womb for the first time in 200 years, and you're born into the world in America. As you're growing and developing, you have ancestral memory of having lived in the Akan Empire, using gold dust and so forth, using Sika. So when someone starts talking about that, hearing these ancestral terms, it automatically clicks because that's the culture you actually come from. You used to engage in this. Or if you were from the Yoruba, the Oyo Empire and so forth, when someone starts talking about the Orisha, talking about the Egungun and so forth, as soon as you hear those terms, it's a wrap because this is the language I used to speak. And your ancestresses and ancestors have been trying to reveal that to you since you were a child. And they put you in position to come in contact with the people who are still practicing the culture in the Western Hemisphere so you can reconnect. So that's for everybody. Everybody has that. All of our people, I'm saying Black people, we have these ancestral memories because we engage in these practices, and those things are triggered when we come in. Even if we see something online, if we see an image from our culture that we used to engage in and so forth, it's a trigger and it leads us to investigate. So the question, so our ancient economy was based off the exchange of currency as well. Does this mean whites stole the concept of money, currency, and economics from us? Absolutely. They had no concept of that. And you have to recall, so they haven't been in the world more than 12,000 years. We already had civilizations before 12,000 years ago. They came into contact with us coming from Northern Eurasia into Southern Europe. We were already occupying Southern Europe and the Near East and so forth, and into India, because we had migrated from the continent, North Africa and East, and went into Southern Europe and the Near East and India and even into China and so forth before the Eurasian existed. So when they came from Northern Eurasia and came in contact with us, they saw us engaged in business and economics and utilizing gold and other, forms of currency and so forth. All these different things we were doing before they existed. So they didn't come up with anything. They didn't, like we said, they didn't come up with the alphabet. They didn't come up with, the numerical system. They didn't come up with writing, language, medicine, the sciences, architecture, anything. Okay. Okay, so there's a question. If we can't attend the SUSUW session, can we pay for the recording? So let me show you the. So the question. So yes. So some people, and let me just scroll down real quick. Okay, so as you can see, this is the flyer. That's the old flyer from the first class, which is finishing up. So July 10th through July 31st. So that's 4 Wednesdays, Awukada. So some on our list are not maybe living overseas or living in a time, frame, living in a time zone where you can't attend those classes. The classes are 8 p.m. Eastern time. 8 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesdays for 4 weeks. And then the books that we utilize are free downloads, and the articles that we utilize, including some of the articles we've published and additional information, free downloads as well. So for those of you who are in a different time zone or in a different country and so forth, but you're part of our subscriber list or on one of our lists and so forth, yes, we can make that exception. If you like to purchase the certification course, you can go ahead and do that. We do have the recordings. Whenever we record the sessions, of course, we send the sessions with a private link and a password to all participants so you can review them at any time, because it's a lot of information and you do need to review it on a regular basis. Even when you have left the course, there are certain things you want to go back to. And so you'll have that indefinite access, unlimited access to the course with a private link and a passcode. So yes, if you would like to take the course and you can't fit it into your schedule in that particular time zone, then we can do it that way as well. Now, we also have something, and this is another part of when we're talking about an ancestral cultural approach to entrepreneurship, economic activity, and so forth. One of the things our Odumafo impressed upon us to offer, which we're doing, and we did a whole video on this, presentation on this. If you look on our YouTube page, you'll see this video. It says referral fee. So when you click on it, we go into some detail about this. But this is what it's talking about. So that referral fee, it says receive a $100 referral fee for referring the course. Now, of course, the course is open to Afro-Akani people, African Black people only. And of course, Black people, wherever we exist in the world, are African. So whether you're in America, on the continent, in Europe, in the Caribbean and so forth, if you're Black, you're African. So the course itself is a 4-week course. is $399, basically $99 a week. We looked at, what other people were doing, and they are, some people are charging $1,000 for courses or more, and they're not giving you accurate information. So ours is basically $99 per week. And one of the reasons we chose that, we know that typically most places will charge or pay you like $100 or $200 to conduct a half an hour meditation session. So if you go to a school or after school program, or even if you set up a event at a community center, or you go to say if they were having a Juneteenth, celebration or a Kwanzaa celebration or a cultural event or marketplace, some event in the summer and so forth, and they say, we want somebody to come out before we have a lecture, we want to do meditation first. Typically, they'll pay you $100, $200 to do that session. They have that as part of the budget. So within the first couple of, contracts that you get, if you get paid $200 for the first couple of ones or the first 4, your class is paid for. But we also have this option, the referral fee. So if you refer someone to us and they register for the course, when they pay the $399, which is basically $400 for the course, once they make the payment, then we will PayPal you or Cash App you $100 as a referral fee for finding the individual. Because, of course, you have access to people and organizations that we don't have access to. So we want as many Black people engaged in the practice of SUSUW meditation, as well as people teaching, so we can reach as many of our people as possible. We engage in SUSUW every day. SUSUW, or meditation, means to take measure. SUSUW or SUSUW means to measure or take measure or contemplate SUSUW upon the ehun, upon the self. That is the Akan term for meditation. SUSUW also means to take measure in the language of ancient Khmer. But if someone says you're engaging in SUSUW, that means contemplation. If you see a leopard focused or contemplating on a gazelle, and they're moving very slowly and stealthily, they're engaged in SUSUW. They're focused, they're pinpointed in their concentration, they're blocking everything else out so they can engage in the behavior they want to engage in, which is to feed themselves, to catch that animal, that prey. When you're watching something on television, you're looking on something online, when you're reading a book and so forth, when you're focused and you're contemplating, you're taking measure of something that you're taking in, you're engaged in a taking measure process. You're measuring the capacity of something, you're measuring the depth of something, you're calculating the capacity of something, you're engaged in measurement, study, contemplation, focus. That is SUSUW. So every time you read something, every time you listen to something, every time you watch something, you're engaged in a form of SUSUW. We're used to studying or watching or listening to things that the whites and offspring put forward in social media, television, movies, music, and so forth that are detrimental to us. We've always used SUSUW, or enhanced in-depth contemplation or internal measurement, to benefit ourselves, to expand our awareness, to create, healing where imbalance is manifested. We use SUSUW to incorporate law, to restore balance to our lives. So we have a ritual process to affect that. And that's been for thousands of years, and we go into detail about that. So people need to know they're always meditating, but what are you meditating upon? Are you drinking in things that, pollute your mind and trigger you to engage in self-destructive behavior? Or are you contemplating or measuring the internal self, SUSUW, for healing, for restoration, for the expansion of your awareness so you can take in the things that you contemplate upon and use them to benefit yourself and your community? So we talk about that, but when we try to get as many of our people engaged in proper SUSUW, proper reflection, proper contemplation, proper measuring the depth of the self, calculating the capacity of the self, SUSUW at home, the more children and adults engage in that, the behavior changes. Self-destructive behavior, toxic behavior, arguments, fights and so forth You can eradicate all of that when you have proper contemplation skills, measurement skills, and so forth. So you can find people that we're not connected to yet. So if you refer the course, you just send them to our page. When they go to the page, and they will see the, they'll see the trailer. It's talking about what SUSUW is about. We're going to detail about that. They'll also see on that page a number of the different sessions that we've done on meditation in its different facets over the past few weeks in the run-up to the first course. So, for example, when you scroll down, you'll see the flyers and so forth, but then you'll see a number of these different sessions we've done. We talked about the female divinity Meri, Seker, the goddess of meditation and silence, SUSUW, meditation and effectuating male-female sacred balance. We talked about the female divinity Bast, the cat, sacred animal totem is the cat, but that female force that governs the pericardium, the sacred sac, the fluid sac that surrounds the heart, stabilizes the heart. It also has to do with relationship fidelity, the sacred forms, healing, recalibration through the context of SUSUW meditation. So, all of those different things you'll see on the site. So when you send people to our site, it will give them all the detailed information. And then, when they sign up, when they register, just let us know that this is a person that you referred, or they'll let us know that you referred that person. As soon as they make the payment for the registration, we will send you the $100 referral fee. So this is another form of economic empowerment. This is a way we can empower those who take the course, those who refer the course, and even the people who are receiving the benefits of the course in the context of when you go out and teach, you go to a community center, you go to a school, you go to a place of employment. Those people take in those skills. They learn how to reduce anxiety, reduce depression, lower their blood pressure, enhance weight loss, activities and so forth, and enhance productivity at work, enhance learning outcomes, get more focused so they can take tests and pass tests and so forth, reducing these anxiety within personal relationships or relationships with regard to work product, a number of different things. It's going to benefit our people as a whole. It will also benefit the people who are engaged in the economic activity as well, the entrepreneurial endeavors as well. So everything we do should be rooted in this NKWAMUA whole life approach to dealing with every issue. This is why we have on the flyer for the hold on a second. This is once again why we call the series the NKWAMUA Whole Life, Nkwa Life Mua Whole Life Transformation Series. In this context, we're talking about financial recalibration. We want to approach economics from an ancestral, cultural, purificatory vantage point. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and end here. I really hadn't planned to go 2 hours. I was thinking it was going to be like an hour. If nobody else has any questions, we can go ahead and end here. Of course, this will be, you'll have access to this, on the YouTube page. If you have any questions, just hit us up on Instagram or Facebook, or, via our, email address that we have linked on the site and so forth. So, but once again, yet I'll say we thank everybody for joining in with us. And we will meet again.